All right, we are here for another Golf Clash tournament. This is the Winter Slopes tournament. We're going to be playing in the Rookie division, so these videos will be geared towards those of you that are playing in the Rookie tournament. So our first step whenever a new tournament comes out is we want a blank piece of paper, so we're going to start taking notes for all the holes. So we're going to start scouting them. We've got our trusty styluses. I just bought some new styluses. These are a little bit longer than the older one that I used, and they're a little bit heavier. The problem with these older ones is they come in 2 packs, and one of them, the tip always falls off or isn't even attached when you get it. What I'm thinking about doing, I have a machine shop, is taking this one, which screws off, and taking that barrel that's in there out and installing it in this one so that I can use this one with a replaceable tip. But we're going to try this one out and see how we like it. It's a little bit heavier, so I just got to get, if you're playing for a long period of time, having some weight in your hand might fatigue your hand. So we've got our blank piece of paper, and we're going to start making some notes as we go through these holes. And what we want is, ones where we're going for something, we want to go for it. Ones that we need, like you have to get that shot on there, we want to write that down. And we're going to keep our notes on here so that as we get towards the weekend, we can continue to perfect our notes. All right, so on hole number 1, now they've split these up, so we've got some of these holes, the Greenock Point holes are available on Tour 5, although I played Tour 5 for a couple hours last night and did not get a single hole that's in the tournament, so they're being stingy on them. And then the Vineyard Acres ones that are towards the end, I think 6, 7, and 8, or 6, 7, and 9 are Vineyard Acres. Those ones we're not going to get to practice other than in like a qualifying round. So this is a great time to have 2 accounts so that you can go in and practice twice on Monday and then try and get qualified on Tuesday. So hole number 1, this is one of the this is one of those racetrack par 3s that you're hitting over in this area somewhere, and you're trying to ride along the ridge. It's a pretty steep hill right here. You can't hardly tell it, but it's very, very steep, and you're trying to ride along and then get out on the green, and it'll roll down towards the hole. It tends to feed down towards the hole, so if you come in a little low, you'll end up down here by the sand. But pretty much, when you're looking at the green, if you can hit pretty much anywhere on this side of that line, you're going to end up getting fed right down to the hole. And this is one of those ones where you've got so much stuff going on the green, you can't aim your ball guide right at the hole to try and go for the hole-in-one. So it's going to be one of those ones that some people are going to hole-in-one, and most people aren't, just because of the way the hole lends itself. Now, if you're using an extra mile, I think not using a crazy ball, but I think you can get, most of the time your red line's going to be right in that spot. So most people, this hollow that's right here, you can kind of see that depression in the ground right in there. Most people are going to be aiming somewhere from the back of the sand back here in this area. Something in this range is what a lot of people are going to do, and they're going to apply. Everybody's going to use a little bit different to get it to this way. If you're forward like this, you could actually apply some backspin, and you could apply, you're going to do a lot of right hand curl, side spin. Depending on where you're at out here is what's going to happen up here. So you can go, hey, on this one I'm going to use backspin. Well, it's going to depend on where you put it. So what you want to do is find a spot. So like if you want to be in this upper spot, maybe the white ring up against the fringe down at the bottom, or wedge something between the blue ring on the top, or whatever, however it happens to work, so that when you come here, we can try and eliminate one more variable by being in the same spot every time. So we started off in the same spot. And then if we make adjustments and then we find that, hey, we're here, then we can make an adjustment to try and dial it in like artillery to get that ball to get closer and closer to the hole. I like to start off a little bit further back where this depression's at. Maybe not quite that far, but almost. And then run just a little bit of topspin, maybe 1.5, not any more than 2 topspin. And you'll know because the course will tell you how much topspin you can put on there. If you put too much topspin and your ball guide's ending up out here in the rough, then that means you're going to have to apply more curl in order to compensate for that. And why do that to yourself? So when you find your spot out here, you're going to put topspin on it so that your ball guide is running up along the top. And you're going to use minimal, if any, curl to get the ball to go down into this direction. So what you're trying to do is get it to roll across so that it comes up higher when it finally hits the green. But I can tell you that you can find the shot, find a spot. My recommendation would be is to find a spot wherever you feel comfortable out here. Find that spot so that every single time you can come here, you can start your ball off in exactly the same spot, so that your variables are all on this side of the shot. You don't want this to be, because if this is a variable and every time you're in a slightly different spot out here, and this is a variable, the rest of it doesn't matter. You may hit it one time and it goes, yeah, that was it, that was perfect, I had 1.5. Hey, none of that stuff mattered on this hole. Okay? It's a pure luck hole. So the goal is not to end up in the rough up here or end up in the sand. I see some people come to this hole and they try and do a shot where it's lower down, where they're on this little spit, or they're in this area here and they're trying to come at the green like this. Why would you put this sand trap into play? And it's a par 3. It's a low percentage par 3 to begin with. And now you just put one of the biggest sand traps in play. Hey, stay up here. If you're doing the wind rings and you're making your adjustment, the transition between the fairway and the rough right here is right at the top of the hill. So up here it's flat, and then it drops off this hill. I mean, like drops off the hill. You're like at Daytona. It's a real steep bank. If you are starting you're here and you've got your rings out like this and you're pulling it this direction, and you bring this center dot, the bullseye, on the other side of this ridge, and you get it out here in the fairway, you move it that much, the game's got, I'm not going to say it's a glitch, it's just how the geometry works here in their algorithm, that when you pull it up over to here, you have a tendency for it to end up landing over here, where it like the wind didn't even come into effect. It said, oh, you want your ball to land right there? Okay, that's where we're going to land it. And you end up here in this. So when you're making your wind adjustment, especially in rookie, because we're not going to have 10, 15 mile an hour winds where we're going to have to be doing stuff like that. Try and always keep your bullseye so that it's on this side. So if you have to ride it up here, you always want it to be on this side or right on that line. Try not to pull it over to here. If you're playing in the upper tours and you're finding that you're having to pull over there, then you're going to have to make an adjustment for that. You're going to have to see, like, how far out here, or what's the difference. Once it gets up here, it treats that movement differently than it does when you're moving it down here and you're over the top of the fairway. The other thing is people will shoot this shot fine, and then they'll have too much topspin and they'll blow through the curvature of the course and they'll end up out here. You don't see that as much, because typically if you can land this shot out here, unless you're doing something crazy, you're going to be able to get out on the green. But you can put too much topspin on it and end up blowing through the curve right here, and it doesn't roll down. It goes forward and ends up in that rough. It doesn't take a lot here, and you're not going to have to use a monster ball unless you want to hit up here in the front. Because typically on this course, they're going to give us a headwind going in this direction. Sometimes they'll give us wind going in this direction. And that'll require us to pull it, this way, where we can get on the other side of this, and that'll jack your shot up. So that is absolutely on there. I'm not sure. I'm going to use an extra mile. Extra mile works really good on that hole. Any driver is going to work good. If you're going to hit in the back, you could probably use a quarterback. But we're definitely going for the hole-in-one. But our odds of getting a hole-in-one are pretty low. So we're going to count that as a birdie hole. Let me grab a pencil real quick. So we're going to mark that down as a -1 hole. All right, hole number 2. Okay, this is a par 4. And we are going to, I'm going to write on mine, need eagle. We need an eagle on this. Now there's several different ways to shoot this. If you have an underdeveloped extra mile and you don't have a collection of, you want to save your 3 power balls, the way to hit this is to start off over here, and you're going to blow through the rough. So what you're doing is this area where the boot is right here, this little boot, that's all rough. So you're going to start off out here, and you're going to go from there out here into this, and you're going to try and work your way through the rough by using topspin. And so it'll hit in the rough and then blow through the rough because that topspin will throw it through and then dribble out there onto the green. You'll have to practice that shot because you'll end up here short and still in the rough. If you're short, it's not a problem, but you want to get, no matter what, you want to get out of that rough. You want to use the rough and then get out of it. It's a tricky wind adjustment down here. There is an adjustment that needs to be made. I always give myself, if you're going to take this shot here, and this shot here actually will give you a better ending because you have a little bit more control down here when you're setting the shot up of where your top spin's ending up. When you start the rough bump right here and you're trying to blast out of the rough, you don't have quite as much maneuverability, so you end up in most cases tending to be a little bit low. And you don't want to be, the way that this works is it's very easy to end up in the sand, so it would be better to be low and down here on the green. But for the first shot, when you're taking this one, always leave yourself, when you're in this landing area, always give yourself enough room. Don't ride right up against the edge of that rough. Be a couple rings away from it because there is an adjustment. And if you watch Zachary Jones and Golf Clash Tommy, I'm sure that they're going to give you there's a 10% or a 20% adjustment that we're going to make there for the wind because it affects it a little bit different. Now, if you want to hit here, you're going to need to bring a 0 power ball. So this is actually a great hole for a Santa because you've got lots of curl and you need some curl in order to be able to bring it back to the hole. And it's a 0 power ball so that you're right at, your red lines, if you're using your driver, your red line's going to be like right in here, so you're barely going to have enough room. Sometimes, I'm not sure which way the wind go. I've played here in tournaments where the wind was going in this direction, and I've played here in tournaments where the wind was going in this direction. So if the red line's here for your minimum driver and you've got wind going in this direction, then it's easy to make that pull. You set your ball up where you want, you get everything out here good, and then you can make the pull. If the wind's going in this direction and your red line's here, then you're going to be right up against that red line, so you're going to have to make really good adjustments. And this right here will be tough because if we have just enough wind and your red line's just in the right area, then you may have the shot lends itself to being closer than 2 rings to that edge. It wants you to get really close, and then there's an extra adjustment you have to make, and so it's a very tricky shot. I've done this shot many times, and for a long time that was the shot that I took on this because I like the control at the end of the run better. But what I didn't like is that you're putting all of this stuff into play. And while I didn't end up in this very often, when I did end up in it, it always sucked. So I may use this shot in the tournament but what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to land in the rough and do a pure rough bump. So I have to use a little bit bigger ball, like maybe a Quasar. Depending on the level of your extra mile, you may have to bump that up to a Katana, but you can get this done. You don't have to have a monster ball. It does help if you've got curl in that ball, so a quasar would be a good choice. And you're going to land it right there in the center. I mean, you want to be, if you draw the line from that way to the fairway, that way to the fairway, and that way to the sand, you want that to be kind of like right there in the middle. Give yourself a lot of room for error here. And you're going to apply topspin and right-hand side spin to try and bring it back towards the hole. It would be better, like if you go out, you know, I've done that shot and I keep ending up out here, way up here in the rough, or I end up in the sand. It would be better to end up down here, anywhere, or just right here, than it is to end up in this rough or this sand. So if you're shooting this shot, it is tricky when you're shooting this shot to try and get the ball guide on that bump to go right at the hole so that you can try and hole it out. And so in order to make it do that, you've got a bunch of stuff going in this direction, and it's really easy to end up over here in the sand or right up here at the top. So if you find yourself over here, even, you know, every other time, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4, that's unacceptable. You know, we got the opening round and the weekend round. We got 4 times we got to play this hole, and what we want is 4 eagles. We want to get 4 eagles. So it would be better to be out here. You don't want to be too far down. This is a long putt. So this is one of those holes that you'll have to practice with your clubs to figure out, you know, like what your top spin and what your side spin is in order to get it up here in that area. You want this to be a non-overpowered shot. You just want to take the shot. But up here you're close to the red line, and if the wind is going in this direction where you've got to pull up against, you may not have enough room to put it right where you want. You may have to use overpower, or you'll have to step up to the next ball. But this is absolutely hole number 2. Absolutely need an eagle. And I believe that on that drive shot, if you're bouncing it over, if I remember correctly, once I'm on the hole, my brain kicks back in. But I think down on this shot, if you're trying to land here and bounce it over, then your first shot down here is going to be plus 10% for your wind adjustment. And I always liked coming from over here and bouncing through the rough and trying to get into it. You can come in from over here and try and land out here on the fairway and bring it in. You can also come in from this direction where you're starting off over here and you're coming at the green. But from over here, this is a shot that they use a lot in the higher levels, because depending on the way the wind's blowing, you may have to come over here to get it done. But you need a club that'll get you from here and stop it that quick and move this curve. But in rookie, we're either going to be bouncing over here or we're going to do that rough bump in most cases. Definitely need an eagle on that hole. Okay, this is a par 5. So hole number 3, par 5. I'll write that down, par 5. And we absolutely, positively need an eagle on this. I think all the par 5s are very eagleable. But I know from like hole number 9, I glanced at it, it's very technical. This hole right here is very technical. Everything out here, this whole area, if they took that off and the rest of that hole was all you saw, it would never change. There wouldn't be a single person out there whose game would get changed because nobody uses that. Okay, coming out here, you know, you look at it and go, wow, I can hit it a mile out there. Here's the green. There's your preferred landing spot. There's the green. There's your preferred landing spot. Drawing that line of this triangle, it looks to the eye like, wow, if I get out here, I'm good to go. But that is not the case. You'd be lucky if you could even make this island right here. And then you're coming at the island from a straight direction, and then you're trying to get it to go almost at a 90. So this is not going to happen out here. What you're going to do, and this is another one of those ones, you want to give yourself some room. And this hole with a bigger ball, quarterback, rock, because you don't need a lot of topspin on this. your goal is not to get, if we draw a line here, your landing area is out here to dribble onto the green. And while it's downhill and it looks like, man, if I hit that with any speed, that thing is going to run down into that sand, you will very seldom ever see anybody ever get down into the sand. I mean, it happens, but it'll be a rarity. It's an exception. For whatever reason, this green, the ball will land pretty fast, and then it'll like relax and slow down and come towards the hole. It's like the greenskeepers cut it so that when you're coming down the hill, you're actually going against the green on the grass. So your first landing spot is not actually where you're trying to come here. You're actually up here higher, bringing it down towards the hole. So if you draw a line from there to there, you got to be either on that line. You could be just a little bit, maybe this right here, and everything on this side of the line is where you want to be. So when you're doing your drive, try not to get way out here. You only need to use, this is a pure layup shot. That's why you can use a quarterback with a bigger ball. And a bigger ball is going to help you on this second shot. More than likely, you're going to have to bring a bigger ball anyways. Even if you get out here in the preferred spot and you're out in this area right here and you've got a Guardian, it's quite the shot to get out here. And depending on the way the wind's blowing, and we will probably get favorable wind here. So the wind may be blowing in this direction or in this direction, but it's not going to be blowing towards us. It might. So we'll have to see how the wind's going to play out. But if you're out here in this preferred spot and you've got a Guardian, it's quite the shot, because with a Guardian you only got 2 topspin. And this hole plays really good with a Guardian, because you're just, when you come out at the green, you're just, wherever you can reach out here to this, you want to be just past that rough so that the ball will land there and then run out onto the green, and it slows down. So we're not going to have to use that 2 topspin. Is going to, in most cases, work all right. The problem is that if you find yourself just a little far down here or a little short, this hole lends itself to wanting you to use some curl. So you're going from here to here, and so the straight line's like that, and here's the pin over here. So it lends itself to wanting to put a little bit of curl on it to get it to flow in that direction. But you can't do that because these trees are in play. So when you're shooting the second shot, you can't apply any curl at all. Those trees are absolutely in play, and the further out here you get, the more you put those trees in play. Now, you could blast all the way through on the other side and try and come at it like this, but that's a much harder shot. And it's a lot more dangerous, too, because if you ended up short shooting it and you're right behind the trees, you just messed yourself up. If you ended up hitting it too long, now you're in the rough down here and you really messed yourself up. And you have to be a lot more aggressive on this first shot coming from this area in order to get down there. So I don't know that there's any risk versus reward. There is no reward really for coming over here. The shot is to lay up here and come straight at the hole and bouncing off this island. If you've got underdeveloped clubs, you're going to want to bring a big wood, so you're going to want to bring your big dog. And the big dog will have it, because you don't have to you're not putting a bunch of stuff on there. If you're using a Guardian, you're only using 2 topspin. So if you're using a big dog, you're not going to use any more than that. This will definitely be one of those holes you'll have to play a few times with your clubs, but if you're picking a ball, pick a ball that's got curl. So if you feel comfortable playing this with a Quasar, play it with a Quasar. You can easily get this done with a Quasar. But we're in a tournament, and you want to make some of these shots easier on yourself. So having a little more curl and a little more power is not a bad deal. So a katana is the next choice. If your clubs are low enough level, or you're not feeling like you're getting it done with the katana, then your next choice would be a Kingmaker. But this is absolutely a hole that we want to get an eagle on. We need to get an eagle on this hole. And I'm probably going to start off with a QB, and I'm going to start off with a katana. And we'll see if we need to up it to a Kingmaker. And that's pretty much all we're going to need on that hole. Hole number 4. Got a par 3. I cannot remember this par 3, so I don't know if we use woods or long irons on it. I know that if you look at the green, this area right here, and we take this rough out, we take all that rough out, that green, everything else that's on this is an optical illusion. The only thing I see is that. So I'm going to do, I think that we have a pretty decent hole-in-one shot on this with whatever club we're going to pick, where we can start off just a little bit off the green onto the fairway out here and then run it up there. But we want to work this shot out, and we don't want to do anything that puts any of this other stuff in play. So if you're having a hard time on this hole, then you either figure out whatever wood or whatever long iron you have that's got the best backspin, and then you're just going to try and put it right next to the hole. But I think once I get on this and remember how to play this hole has a hole-in-one shot. So on this hole right here, we're going to go for hole-in-one. More than likely, I will use a navigator on this hole. But we'll have to see where the red lines are and make our ball choice accordingly. Hole number 5 is a par 5. And we need to go for albatross. Go for Alby. And we're going to use an extra mile. And we're going to use probably a Kingmaker. On the first shot, the drive shot, you're trying to land out here and bounce over so that you can end up somewhere on this side of the line is where you're going to end up. From here to the green is a long iron shot. So you're going to want to bring, you can do this 2 different ways, but let's talk about the drive first. So when you're on the drive, you need some distance. So a bigger power ball is going to help you. They've had wind on this in multiple directions in tournaments, so we'll have to see. I've seen it like this. I've seen it like this. So that we'll have to see how they're going to do the wind. But our goal is to get here, put our ball out here, and then we got a rough bump. So when you're here, you need power. To make it around this bend, you need curl. And then our second shot, since we're going for albatross, we can use that 3 wind on a Kingmaker to cut the wind down. We won't need any of the curl. And the power is going to make sure that we're more, because of where we're landing at out here, that 3 power ball. Now if we get up there and we find that, hey, we keep hitting it too long, we're too long out here, and now we're not in our long iron range, we're in our short iron range, it's not going to matter. The Hornet's going to work just as good for the shot as the backbone is. So I'm going to bring a backbone on my albatross shot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a rough bump right here in front of the green and try and dribble it in. And it only takes, if I remember correctly, it only takes 1 or 2 topspin. It doesn't take a lot, maybe a little bit of right hand side spin, because the way that the course is sloped right there, the course is kind of rolling to the left as it comes out of this little turn, and so the ball tends to want to hop to the left. So it hits the ground exactly where you wanted it to, and then it tends to take a little bit of a hop to the left. So if I remember correctly on this hole, when we're on the green, we're going to want to be, I'm probably going to start my artillery sighting in just a little bit to the right of the hole. Now the other way to play this is to bring a Saturn. So if you don't feel comfortable doing rough bumps, bring a Saturn. If you've got a Saturn that's high enough developed, that's got a lot of backspin, you can backspin. You can start off on the green, and there is a huge backboard on the back behind the flag, and you can hit that backboard and it'll backspin it down the hill to the hole. What you don't want to have happen is don't push the limit down here at the bottom on this rough. Don't come down here and be forcing the issue down here so that you can get really close to the hole. It will roll down that hill. So what you're actually looking for is looking at your first bounce, your bounce on the actual green, and trying to get that up as high as you can up on that hill. So when it backspins, it trickles down to the hole. But if you try and start it off too low and it doesn't go in the hole, it's going to backspin past the hole and come down here, and you could end up in the rough. You still got an Albie shot if you're going up here and you're trying to bring it down. And I found that if you're up here and you're working from the top down, back down to the hole, that I definitely want to be a little to the right. And I used that shot when this hole first came out. That was the way I like to play this hole, because at that time I wasn't super comfortable. Some holes I was comfortable doing the rough bump, and some of them I wasn't. So when I first started, I did the Saturn shot, and the Saturn was the club that I carry in my utility bag when I'm playing one-on-one. So I use the Saturn a lot and do that backspin. So if you're out playing one-on-one, you just play it to whichever club you have in your bag. But you can do a rough bump here, and you have a serious albatross shot. I mean, serious enough that you literally could get an albatross. If you hit the rough bump, which I think is the best way to get an albatross here, it's the most consistent. You know, there's a chance that I'm gonna get an albatross on this hole at least once during this tournament. Hopefully it's on the weekend round. Hopefully I can dial it in and finally get it on the weekend round. I'd like to get it once in the opening round and once in the weekend round, and you have that good of a shot. Okay, so that was hole number 5. And that is an Albie. So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is definitely an eagle hole. 6, 7, 8. We're at -8 right now. -1, -2, -2, -1, -2. Okay, hole number 6. Now this is one of the Wine Valley. So there's several different ways to play this. Real quick on hole number 5, going back. You can, if you come here with a big enough ball, and I don't know if in rookie we'll have high enough wind to get us over even if we brought a 5-power ball, but if you can hit over on the other side here, you can get your ball up and be trying to either chip in or putt in for albatross. So there is that shot, and I can guarantee you when I get this hole and start practicing it, I'm gonna try these shots out and see if I can get up there, because I would much rather take a short chip from up here, even if I was in the rough. But I don't know if we'll get enough wind in rookie to be able to get over even with a high enough power ball. In the upper division, especially in expert, where they start getting the really massive wind, you can make it over here and go for this. It'll take a 5-power ball. If we can get up there and have a short shot, it's worth going for. If we can do it consistently. It's not worth it if we only get over there and get in the right spot 1 out of 10 times. I'd rather have 10 albatross shots doing the rough bump off the front than one, hey, I got to putt it in for albatross. Hole number 6. This is another hole where there is a shot where you can try and get over in one, but I don't think that we have enough wind in rookie for us to be able to do that. And it's not worth going for it if you're going to end up out here in the rough. You have a pretty decent shot here. This hole is a very tough hole to eagle. there are going to be people in this tournament that eagle this hole, but it is a very tough shot to eagle. I've gotten eagles on this hole, but this is a tough hole to eagle. It's a birdie hole with a serious shot at eagle. So the two ways to go are to either bounce here, coming down into the bottom. Now the benefit is that if you can get down here in the bottom and you're on the fairway, you have a long iron shot. That's benefit number 1. Benefit number 2, if you're down here on the bottom, is if you're down here on the bottom and you end up out here in the rough and you blow that shot, you can make it from there to there. I know you can make it with a Nirvana. I'm not sure what other clubs you could make it with. It is a tricky shot to get down there, and I see a lot of people that do this shot, if they blow the shot, they end up usually out in the rough in front. The transition from here to here is actually pretty easy, but if you get greedy, if you look at where the pin's at, you draw a line from the pin to that area, you know, it's going like this, but you've got to negotiate around this sand trap, so you've got to make this curve. So if you're coming at it and your first landing spot's here, the ball's wanting to come forward, but you need it to kind of go around the curve. So you almost need it to go like this, where it's making the little S curve. And that's a tricky thing to get down if you get greedy. You don't have to get greedy. You only really need to get right there. If you can just dribble it over and get right there, you're in your long iron range and you got a really decent shot. I'm going to bring, and most people that are taking this, because you need to get farther down in here, you're going to end up needing to bring a bigger driver. So once again, you're trying to make a very technical shot using a driver that has poor accuracy. I'm going to bring a quarterback, and I'm going to start off right here, and I'm going to try and put my ball right there, right there, right there, right there, right there, every time. I want to get this shot consistent. Yes, I would have a better shot if I could end up down there consistently, but this is a much tougher shot to be in the same spot over and over and over and over and over and over and over, because I'm not really trying to work on my first shot. I'm trying to get this second shot to go in the hole. And this hole is, like I said, it's a tough hole to try and get an eagle on. So I want to give myself the same shot every time so I can work on it. The same shot every time so I can work on it. So I want to be very consistent right in the same spot, right at the top of that hill. And so since I'm laying it up, I'm going to use a quarterback on this, and I'm going to use a bigger ball. I'm probably going to use a Katana or a Titan. You don't have a lot of curl, you don't have a lot of that stuff, so I mean, if you don't need that, so you don't necessarily need to use a Kingmaker. But if it was the Kingmaker or one of the special balls that only has 2 side spins, well, I don't need 3 side spins, so I'm not going to use a Kingmaker. I can buy Kingmakers anytime. I can't buy those special balls anytime, and that special ball might have a place down the road. But I think you can get this done easily with a Katana. I mean, in day-to-day play, you can get this done with a Quasar. But in the tournament, you want to be very consistent with what you're doing. And so use what ball will put you in the best range down here, so that maybe you're at minimum club or maybe you're at maximum club. You know, your maximum's here, so that you're using the right ball for the clubs that you have in the spot that you're laying yourself up into. Because you're really bringing all this equipment for this second shot. So the first shot, quarterback getting up here to the hill. Now if you use the ring method, your first landing spot is somewhere, you know, on this line. Well, when you're on that line, so you're here and you're making an adjustment, they give us wind that's going in this direction a lot. So what you would do is you would turn it around so that you're on this side of the ball, and then you'd pull the ball back in order to compensate for the wind if you're using the ring method. Well, there's a problem. You can't see the rings because of these trees. And so if you use the ring method, be prepared that when you're here, you need to spin it around so that you're looking at it from this direction. The wind's going in this direction, and instead of pulling it back towards you like you normally would, you're going to push it away from you and adjust the wind out that way, because you won't be able to see the rings from over here. So you'll have to come at it from the other side. If you're new to the rings or you've never done that before, it does feel a little different. You have to get used to it. But there's several holes in these courses that happens, and you need to kind of get used to that transition. So if you see it, or if it happens to you once on there and you go, hey, next time I go there, I need to look at that from the other side, you need to keep track of that. With this hole here, we're definitely going to write this hole down. Hole number 6 is a par 4. We're going to bring a quarterback, and I'm going to start off with a Katana. And then we're going to use a sniper for our wood shot to get in. So our wood shot coming into the hole, Once we've gotten to this spot, our next shot here is with a wood. And if you bring, pretty much if you're up at the top of that hill, any wood's going to get you to the point where you can start somewhere down here in the bottom of this and work your way up. Now, if you get up there far enough, or if you brought a big enough wood, you could start off up here in the neck, but and you can't really get far enough to start off on the green. So I would rather start off down here where I have a little more room than start off up here where where this neck starts. Because when I'm up here, you're only going to have maybe, your yellow rings right here, and so you're already on the fringe. So a great shot to the left or the right, or any mistake on your part, bam, you're in the rough. I would rather start off a little bit lower so that I've got a little bit of maneuverability and make sure that my second bounce is up in this area, so I'm bouncing over that. I don't want to get any of this stuff right here involved. And then I'm going to go right at the hole. I want to make sure that my ball guide's going right at it, and the deal is that you can go right at it, and the ball, there's a lot of stuff going on this hole, and it's a very tough hole to eagle. But if you give yourself the same shot every time at that eagle, and you bring a good club that's got good accuracy and got good ball guide, sniper, and you're taking this next shot, then you're going to increase your odds that you will get that eagle because you're being very consistent. The only changes that you're making are those slight little changes at the end. Okay, it keeps going. I keep ending up high of the hole, or I keep ending up low of the hole. And you're trying to fine-tune your adjustments. So hole number 6 is definitely going to be a -1 hole. And some people in the tournament are going to get an eagle. This is a hole that's a hole right there that we want to work on. We want to work on that hole a lot. We want to work on that hole and hole number 5, the hole before, because we want to try and get that albatross shot. And on this hole, we definitely want to increase, or on hole number 6, we definitely want to increase our odds of getting an eagle, but it's still a tough hole to eagle. I've had eagles on this hole, but this isn't one of my most successful holes. I mean, it just lends itself to getting a birdie. Hole number 7, another one of the par 3s. And I know that there are going to be people that have a shot where they start off down here and then they run it up, and then there's people that are going to start off in this neck and bring it over this sand. This hole here does not lend itself to a hole-in-one, and there's this. A backspin shot has just as good of a shot at hole-in-one as the other one. So I'm going to want my first landing spot to be somewhere out in here. I want to take all of this and all of this. I want to take all that stuff out of play. I want to play this hole and think the only thing out there is the green. Maybe I have to start off on the fairway out here for the first bounce in order to get on the green, but I'm not interested in having to negotiate any of this stuff out here. I don't want to get caught up in the sand or the rough, and you'll see people do that, especially the ones that are trying to come at it from this direction. So this hole right here, I'm not sure whether we use a long iron or a wood on it. I will probably use a Navigator. That'll be my starting ball, just because of the extra wind. Sometimes the 1 power doesn't help us, so we'll have to drop down to a Marlin. Those new balls they got out, or a Santa ball, or any, I think of the Oceana ball, or there's several balls that are the 0 power, 5 wind. Weekend round, that's where all those big wind balls come into play. So that hole there, we've got is a -1 hole. Oh, the par 4. There are multiple ways to play this. I believe you're going to have to bring an extra mile, or whatever your biggest driver is, because you're going to need that. You can start off over here and try and work your way to the hole. So let's talk about that shot first. See, a lot of people do that shot, and when you do it, I mean, you can barely get out here depending on which direction the wind's blowing and how big of a ball you brought. You know, you may barely be able to get out into this area. It's not like you can get out here in the middle. You're barely out there. And if you're not using a big enough ball and you don't have good enough clubs, then you may have to use overpowered to just get right there. And what happens, I see a lot is, and I've done it a lot, I've ended up in this sand trap, or I've ended up in the rough right up in here, because you're here and the ball guide's kind of going like this, and then you're applying curl. Well, guess what? The curl here shortened you up. So the landing spot from here to the landing spot here, you went farther. So going from here to here is shorter than going from here to here. So when you applied that curl, everything was perfect, but when you applied that curl, it shortened the shot up and you ended up in the sand. So if you're going to take the shot where you're trying to bring it over and do the curl, you actually want, when I was shooting the shot, and it's been a long time, I was aiming more towards this rough area in between these sand traps. A little bit towards the top of it so that my ball guide was going like this. And that way when I applied that curl, I ended up coming out in here. And I still occasionally would clip the rough right out in here. But it's much better to be, you know, if you're out here in front, that is a super makeable shot anywhere out here in the front. But if you're going to use curl, you can see how the course is getting longer on this side. So when you're down here and and then you draw the line to here when you use the curl, that's quite a bit of distance. And so if you're applying curl, you're going to end up in this area. You're going to have to start your ball guide off so that it comes down further. Then when you apply that curl, you end up out in this area. I'm not going to do that shot. I'm going to start off from here, and I want to get into the rough here, and I'm going to roll my ball through the rough and do a rough bump. There's a lot of holes in this tournament that have rough bumps in them. And if you're not comfortable doing rough bumps, this tournament's not going to be the best shot that you have on a lot of these holes is a rough bump. Hole number 5, the best Albie shot that you have on that is a rough bump. Not that you can't get an Albie backspin in it, but the rough bump is a more consistent shot. Same thing here. You're going to need to use the biggest ball that you need to use for your clubs so that when you're in whatever area out here at your red line with topspin, you can get out over this river and see the ball going through the rough. I don't really like to use overpower on this. You may have to use just a little, like pushing up against the nubs. You know, just a little teeny bit, not enough to make the needle do anything crazy. And you're going to want to use left-hand curl. You're going to use left-hand side spin and left-hand curl. It looks like everything's going to the right here. But the way, when you get this bounce out here, it tends to throw it to the right. And so you want to bring it back to the left. So everything wants to go this way, so you got to kind of, but it doesn't, it's kind of deceiving when you look at the hole. You'll have to practice this hole, but your main goal, your first goal, and the first goal on any of these holes when I'm playing in a tournament is I'm not as concerned about the second shot yet, is I want to see what I can get with my first shot. So if the best I can get with my first shot puts me right here every time, then that means that I need to think about what clubs I need to bring from here to get over to the hole. So on this one, even though I don't need a second, I'm hoping I don't need a second shot. I'm hoping my next shot is either a putt or, hey, I hole-in-one did. My first goal is to start off from here. I will probably start with max topspin, just so I can see what it looks like at the max. I'm looking for the ball that I need that will get me over here on my first landing, and I don't have to use any overpower. That way I can apply some left hand. I'm going to apply max topspin, some left hand side spin, and I'm going to apply just a little bit of left hand curl and see where my ball ends up. If I end up blowing out long, like, wow, you know, I used a katana and I hit here and I was short, or I used a Titan and I hit here and I was long. I mean, I want to know what those are so that I can try and dial in what I need to set up here in order to get that ball to stick on the green. I mean, it's a very, very, very low percentage shot that you would get a hole-in-one here. But ending up out here on the fairway or ending up on the green is very doable. You absolutely have to get an eagle on this hole both times through if you want any thought of getting a win, even a top, even a top 10. I mean, there's gonna be way too many people that eagle this hole every time they come to it. So this is a par 4. We're gonna use an extra mile, and we're gonna find out what ball we need. And I would bring a ball that's got more side spin to it, so that puts you in the Quasar, Katana, Kingmaker group. If you find that you need to use the wind in order to get to the spot out here, in order to do it, you're going to sacrifice one side spin, but use a Titan. That way it's going to cut the wind down less, which will give you more wind, which means you've got more wind to use to push you to where you need to be. Oh, hole number 9. Oh my gosh, this is an extra mile, and this is a big dog. Big dog. And I'm probably going to start off with a Titan. Depends on which way the wind's blowing. This hole now there is a shot, and I don't know if we have big enough winds in Rookie in order to achieve it, but I've never tried it with a 5 power ball where you could try and bounce out here, or trying to bounce out here with a max overpower shot, because you're on this line right here is about max overpower, and trying to use max topspin to roll it out to the tip of that boot. So if you can get out here in the tip of that boot on one, you got a pretty good shot. The problem is if you end up out in the rough out here, you can't get on, and now you just took you just made your eagle shot a chip shot. So most people are going to play this, and in Rookie we're going to get out here far enough if you've got a big enough ball, probably a Titan, where you can actually start off with a little bit of overpower. Hopefully the wind will be blowing in the right direction and we won't have to use overpower. Hopefully the wind will be blowing in this direction, where we can start off on the other side of that sand and try and get ourselves as far down here as we can. Now it's better, obviously, to be here than it is to be there. So I mean, I got farther out here, but this is closer. So somewhere, if you look at the way the hole is set up, here's the straight line to the hole, and then if we draw a perpendicular line in it, you can see, like if you're up on this side of it in the front of that, that's the spot to be in. So that's what we're targeting for. If we end up out here, that's fine. We still have a shot from out here. But if you're looking for the perfect one, this area up here in the front is the spot to hit. Your work is not over though with the first shot. The first shot is very technical to get down in there. It's very easy to end up over here, and this map picture doesn't show it, but there's a line of trees right here, and that line of trees is definitely in play. And so if you come through here and you're trying to start it off over here and you're trying to get down in there, you don't have a big enough ball, so you're starting off to the side and trying to bring it around. You can see from where the tee boxes are. So if we draw a line from the tee box to that area, that's our line. So if we're starting on this side of the line because we don't have a big enough ball, we just put the trees more in place, and then we got to curl it this way. So that means you're trying to get your ball to do an S curve. And you can end up clipping those trees and get caught up, and you'll end up landing here. And you can't, from this spot, if you end up out here, you can't make it. I mean, if the wind was blowing in the right direction and we had a high enough wind and you had a big enough ball and you did a max overpower shot and everything is perfect, you might be able to get up there. Maybe. Doubtful. You got to get down here, down towards the end, in order to cut that distance off. So you see how much distance you cut off by getting further out there. So you got to be cognizant of those trees. That's why if you use a bigger power ball, you can start off more on this end of the sand. And so you can take that S out of the equation. So then you're going from here to here. That's a much easier for us than to try and do some S curve like this. So on your second shot, this is big dog. I mean, I'm going to bring a big dog, and the big dog has less ball guide, so we're going to have, it's going to make this next shot more difficult. And we're going to start off and bounce it over. So we'll have to apply a little bit of topspin in order to clear this gap so that we can see the other end of the ball guide where it's on the other side. But we have no idea whether that's going to be too much with the big dog, so you want to use just the, the least amount of topspin that you can use to get that ball over. You want to be on the green, and the pin is closer to the front of the green than it is the back. So, dribbling out here on the front, getting on this fairway or getting on the fringe but in front of the hole is not a bad deal, but you need to get out of that rough. So if you're down in this area and you've got enough distance that you could do a rough bump, you could do a rough bump here. Once again, this is another hole that lends itself to doing a rough bump if you got enough distance on your big dog. You don't want to start your rough bump off because you're at the red line. You don't want to start your red line's low, and so you're starting it off down here and you're trying to blast it through because the big dog does have a lot of topspin. That's not as good a deal as when your red line is up here and you can start off more towards the middle. If you're below the middle of this to try and do a rough bump, it's probably better to do the hop over. The one thing that's difficult on this is it's hard to be consistent on this drive. One time you're here, one time you're down here. This one's a little bit longer. You've got to do the rough, you got to do the bounce over. This one's a little bit shorter. Maybe I can do a rough bump. I'm in the middle here. The rough bump's not going to work, and so you're in a little bit of an inconsistent shot down here. The main thing is on this par 5 is not to worry about trying to get the albatross. The albatross would be very nice, but the goal really is to get that second shot up here on the green or on the fringe so that you can do a chip in or a putt and get your eagle and put your hands in the air and go home. Don't get too greedy on this hole. Some holes on this course we can attack, and this course we have to attack just to get the eagle. Now you got to play pretty aggressive, and you got to be on your game to get an eagle on this hole, and it's very eagleable. But any mistake, and you're looking at a much, much harder eagle. So a lot of people are going to end up with birdies on this hole. I would bet over half the bracket is probably going to get birdie this hole at least once, if not both times. So if you can work out consistently getting an eagle on this hole, this is the deal. If you have underdeveloped clubs, but you've got some bigger balls, you've got some 4-power balls, this might be a hole where you pop out that 4-power ball. Because securing your eagle on this is going to separate you from a bunch of people in the herd, and we want to do whatever it takes to make sure that we don't have to work too hard to get our ball down here. We're going to really have to work on this second shot. So anything we can do to make this first shot easier, bigger ball, bigger club, whatever it happens to be, we want to do it. So this hole here is definitely going to be an eagle hole. We're going to have to get an eagle on this hole. Hole number 8, let me look at this hole real quick one more time. We got to get an eagle on this hole. I mean, this is a hole where we got to get an eagle on both times. There's going to be too many people out there that get eagles on that both times. So if we get a perfect round, just like a super clean, what you should be getting on these holes in order to be competitive at the top. You got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Minus 14 is our target score. And then we want to try and make up some shots on one of these other holes. Hole number 6. This is a shot we want to really work on, and we want to try and dial that in to give ourselves a better shot at getting an eagle. This is a hole that not very many people are going to eagle. So I'm going to go for eagle. go for hole one. All right, so we're looking at the Winter Slopes tournament. Those are the 9 holes. So what you want to do now is, do some scouting. Go look up Zachary Jones and look up holes from Greenock Point and Vineyard Acres that are in this, and watch some of the one-on-one players, some of the older tournaments that he's got videos for, and watch Tommy on how they demoed those, so you can get an idea on some of those par threes. Whether you're going to be using a long iron or a wood. And then Monday, we can go out and really kind of have some basic notes. Really look at where your red lines are at. Don't worry about timing out or doing any of that stuff. The whole goal is to learn from your practice round. So going in there and going, hey, I'm using a ball on this hole right here to get me to this spot. And I don't know if I need that big of a ball. Or hey, I went with a Quasar, and then what I found was that when I got over here, my Quasar wasn't enough to get me to where I wanted to be over here. So, making a note that I'm going to switch from a Quasar to a Katana because I put myself in the perfect setup shot, and then when I got there, I didn't like it because I didn't bring the right ball. And keep working on your notes on that Monday practice round, so that when you go out on Tuesday and try and qualify, you'll have a much better deal. I'll post all of the holes on Monday for the qualifying round, so everybody can see how bad I do in a practice. All right, that was the Winter Slopes tournament. Just kind of a basic walkthrough. Thanks for watching.